Okay, I'm going to move on now, and we're going to go to kind of stage two, and this is the novice thrower. I put it 11 to 13 years old, and then the idea is that they've come out this multi-event group. They've gone into maybe the next phase of that multi-event group, looking at run, jump, throw still. They've got about 12 months training age, 11 to 13 years old, have competed in the event now, but are potentially now looking at kind of where do we go now? Kind of that's what's the next stage of their their development. So some of the key kind of considerations for this stage of being a novice. So this one's really about exploring movement to generate speed. So we've done a lot of standing work already in phase one, and that gets them into really competent delivery modes. What we want to do now, and effectively the last thing we did on that standing throw was actually get somebody to be explosive through a full range of movement. What we're trying to do now is extend that acceleration path. So you've got that 2.35 meter shot circle. You want to use as much of that as possible to get as much acceleration and as much terminal velocity on the implement. So really, this stage is about starting to get them to think about how do you kind of elongate the movement to create value and acceleration. At this stage, you're probably looking at a move to simple linear movements. So 12 months of training, I think Lily through standing for pretty much a year and a half before we moved her on. She went originally to step back, then glide, and now she's moving to rotation, which seems to be a pattern that we see in quite a lot of athletes. Some of my athletes that I coach, you may well know, are still stuck on step back, but doing it really, really well. Others have moved on. So it's I think the first step for you is to actually assess the athlete. If they've got those good ABCs, that good mobility, athletic stiffness is there, they're fast, you can probably look at moving them into a straight to glide format rather than the intermediary of a step back. If they're a multi-event athlete and this athlete's going to be a multi-eventer, or this is going to be like second or third string to their bow, step back's a really competent way of you coaching them into some decent results without actually having to go through a very extended development cycle. We're going to start focusing more on foot contacts and position. So where are we contacting with the foot? What is the orientation of the foot? What is the cadence of how our feet should sound? And using sound as part of this is really important. So thinking about that bang, bang, when the feet come down at the front, is going to be really important and one of the biggest things that we've been doing a lot of work on recently is the impact of the transition phase. So that's right foot down to left foot down, and then left foot down to ball release. That's the phase. The transition to delivery is the biggest killer in shot put. So focusing now on points of contact for the foot, the orientation of the feet, the cadence of the feet will really help you in the long run, minimizing the impact of poor transition phases. Also, the impact on hip positions. So if your feet are in the right way, it's likely to have a really positive impact on where your hips are. If your hips are in the right place, you're going to be able to exert force through a more, optimized range of movement, which will then allow you to deliver the ball better. So having foot contacts and positions right at this stage is incredibly important for setting the foundation. We'll start developing more around the importance of the left arm. So using it as a break as you go across a circle, so you don't find athletes opening up in the middle and losing separation. We'll use it as a balancing tool. We'll use it to create stretch across the chest. So again, allowing the athlete to start perceiving and feeling stretch and these sensations of the body. And then finally, that brace position, having them understand how to stop their body on one side to allow the acceleration of the other. Shoulders and head, again, talking about that control, so the coordination bit. Where should their shoulders align? What should their head be doing? Help them maintain separation, stability, orientation as they go across the circle, so enabling that delivery at the front to be as optimized as possible. We will start really talking about the ball position here, and this is one thing that you really should kind of be coaching from this stage, like laser focus on his ball position. If the ball is in front of the hip, so if you're left-handed, it'll be the left top of the hip. So if you think of that big bony bit, the top of your hip, the suprailiac crest, if the ball is in front of that, you've lost separation and the ball will start dictating more of your movement pattern. If you're behind it, you're controlling where the ball is and you can exert more force on the delivery. And the last one, and I think this is something that a lot of kids find really difficult, is center of mass. So if you think about roughly where your belly button is, that's roughly what we say is like the center of mass for the athlete. You'll find a lot of athletes hate not feeling in control. So breaking the inertia of gravity by using your body weight seems really unnatural to them. Going backwards is unnatural to them. All those sorts of things are unnatural. So you've got to do a lot of work at this point to get them comfortable with being off of balance while still in control, which is kind of a little bit of a contradictory statement, but something that's got a really important here. So what I want to do now is let's talk about some of the challenges. So it's a lot to take in. This phase, I think, is like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot of it to swallow. So I would say, if this is anything, don't rush the athlete. Kind of let them explore on their own path. Break down the elephant into bites. Isolate areas and kind of focus on those, and then move on once you've got competency. And some of the drills I'm going to show you here will help you kind of develop some competency in certain pathways before you move them on. There's a lot of paralysis by analysis. What you'll see is that athletes come into the circle and they'll look like they've got this glass look in their face. It's because they're trying to process too much. They're getting in there thinking, oh, holy crap, how do I put all this together? Make it simple for them. Give them simple tasks. Give them problems to solve. Say, like, I just want you to try and sit on the board. Go. And then just watch them do it. Or I want you to just try and get across that circle as fast as possible. Let's see how you get on. And really simplify the task for them to the point where they can get across, they can digest it and then try and implement it as best as they can. We start to talk about rhythm and acceleration here. So the common challenges we see is, like, a lot of athletes will be really fast out the back and really slow at the front. So what you've done is actually slowed the ball down before delivery, rather than the opposite, where you're trying to accelerate the ball through delivery. So trying to make sure that when you're looking at the athlete and seeing this, understand that you don't want slow to fast, you want fast to slow, and you want to explore rhythm and acceleration. So give them an idea of kind of what a cadence of a throw should look like. When they're doing it right, what does it feel like to them? When they're doing it wrong, what does it feel like? Believe it or not, this is something that you're going to work with shot putters all your life with. Even the most competent ones, rhythm, acceleration, speed are all kind of consistent issues you're going to work with. As soon as you change something technically, throws rhythm off, throws acceleration off, you have to go back and revisit this. Loss of separation, so that left arm, shoulders, and head. The left arm opens up, and what you'll see is an athlete landing in the middle, and their left arm's pointing toward the front of the circle, probably their head looking that way as well. The ball's right in front of their hip, and they've got no torque in their body, no separation, no ability to power through the ball. So this is where kind of that left arm education comes in, keeping the left arm back, shoulders to the rear of the circle, parallel to the floor, head facing the rear, looking and focusing at a focal point at the rear, so that you can act as a stabilizing and controlling aspect. Feet and hips and feet alignment. So looking at when you're landing in the middle, your hips and your feet are facing to the side of the circle as your shoulders are facing to the rear. What you'll start seeing is a lot of static feet and long contacts. Kind of mentioned this already. The transition phase is the killer. So from the right foot down to left foot down, that's where the majority of the ball speed is dropped off in shot. You don't want to drop speed off of a ball at any time in shot. You actually want to accelerate it. So getting athletes to understand that, like the floor's lava, playing around with those sort of things, foot drills, jumps, glide pops, and I'll come to some of these. To get them to understand that foot contact time through the middle is really important. And I'll say the last one of these common challenges is lack of contact. You'll see an athlete for 2 weeks, you won't see him again for another 6. So it's really about how do you kind of adapt that slightly. You might lose them to another sport for a period of time, or they might come back. I would say, look, focus on condensed learning. If you get them ask for them for like 4 or 5 weeks and really knuckle them for 4 or 5 weeks, and then let them go and play for a bit, but try and get as much into them in a structured way, kind of taking them through all of those different stages and isolating around the areas that are key importance, in order to give them kind of a good basis. So the next time they come back, you can take off where you left last time, a little bit of re-education, then back into the development cycle again. So stage 2 novice. So what I want to do is take you through some drills here. So we've got an unseat drill, an A drill, a recovery drill, a glide to power, glide to pop, and I call something called the gong. And I'll explain all these in a minute. But basically, these are all glide drills. I didn't put any step back in there. If you want other stuff, I'll point you towards some resources at the end. I'll also kind of give you some context you can come to me with. But ultimately, unseat drill is about kind of harnessing center of mass changes. A drill is about technically moving across a circle efficiently. Recovery is about fast foot contact times. So is glide to power is about effective transitions, kind of moving on beyond the recover. Glide pops is about establishing some contact reactivity through the middle, and then the gong is really about kind of sequencing a transition across the circle into um, a foot and hip movement that's going to be conducive to a really good throw. And the gong, what I would say is it comes from Gong, the Chinese shot putter. She's a glider. I watched at the warm-ups of the Prefontaine out in America, and she had some really interesting drills, and I found this one was really interesting for gliders, as it kind of really emphasized the need for a short transition period. So what I'll do is I'll pull up this now and I'll take you through the videos. So the first one we're going to talk about is the unseat drill. So it's going to set up like you would do at the back of the circle, except that you'll have both feet below the shoulders. And what we're going to ask them to do is just overbalance. So hinge a little bit in the middle, try and stick your butt on the stop board, and then just fall back into it. Let's have a look at that again. So why are we doing this? Again, this is really about us trying to educate the athlete that the first movement out the back, and part of that is breaking inertia, is not going to be a jump up. So what we see is a lot of athletes kind of extending off of their right leg up into the air, looping and landing in the middle. What that creates is a lot of energy bleed off at the top of the parabola. And then when they hit the floor, there's a lot of force absorption when they hit the middle of the circle. What we're trying to do now is educate them that coming out the back of the circle, especially on glide, this is the same for step back as well. You're about hinging and then using your body weight to shift yourself across the circle horizontally rather than up. At the same time, what we're trying to ask them to do, and Lily's obviously hasn't got an implement here. I might even put an implement or a med ball in front of them here, so they're holding it on their shoulder or whatever with two hands to keep their body to the rear and really focus on kind of stabilizing that movement from their lower part of the body. Lily's quite competent. What you find is a lot of people here will actually, like, how can I put this, will be really reluctant to this and be scared of it. You've got to break that down, maybe put a mat behind them, things like that if you really want to be kind to them, or just make them do it. Right, so we move on from this, and this is like, we'll move on to something called the A drill. Why do we call it A? Because it's an A here. Lily isn't stretched as much as I would like her to be here. But the floor is actually quite slippy in here because we just put these floor tiles down. So it's basically an unseat to a long A position. I think this is the first fundamental part of shot put that a lot of people get wrong. I'll play this again in a minute in terms of the A drill. Key coaching points for this are coming off the heel here. So what we want to see is an athlete not pushing off the toe. If they're pushing off the toe here, they're going to go up and they're going to go down. Coming off the right heel means that they're going to have a more horizontal transfer, coupled with the center of mass change means that you're not going to bleed energy out of any sort of transfer across the circle. We're also going to look for good sight lines from the head, so keep a point of reference at the back, and also their shoulders are going to be offset to their hips. So a left hip here, a left foot here is facing to the left-hand side of the circle, but our shoulders are pointing towards the rear. So we're looking at creating separation, push off the heel, sight lines, and kind of looking at the left arm as well. Nice high left arm, breaking the body. So let's go back and have a look at this again. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. The next one's called a recovery drill. So we went back and we started talking about kind of transition times, fast foot contacts, etc., etc. It's from this A position, we want to educate the athlete to bring the right foot under them as quickly as possible so that they get to the power position really effectively, and then they can exert kind of that acceleration into the delivery. So what we'll do now is focus on what this right foot does. You're going to reload here, then you're going to snap it under the body as quickly as possible with the upper body staying facing to the rear, ball behind the hip, sight line maintained. So a couple of things to look at on this, and I'll play this again. This is a little bit high. We probably want a credit card underneath this. She's looking down a little bit, want to look up, but you can see nice neutral body, feet are in decent alignment, left arm to the rear. not holding a shot, but it would be behind her hip as well here. So let's go back and have a look at this. Right, so you want them to reload it a little bit, then bring it under. What you're trying to do is get this transfer under their body as snappy as possible. So what you're going to ideally see in an athlete, if you ever get a chance, go watch Ulf Timmerman, is that stretch with the left leg across the circle is massive. And you want the right leg coming under them as quickly as possible. What you'll see is a lot of athletes will kick up in the air and push up in the air. What you want to think about is actually stretch and compress, stretch and compress. So they're going to stretch with the left leg and then compress the right under their body as quickly as possible. The next drill, I think we're going to have a look at what the next one is. So it's a glide to power. What you're doing is taking what you've just done previously and adapted kind of it to, let me just bring this back again. So a couple of things you want to look at here is make sure they're still coming off the heel at the back. Make sure the head, shoulders, left arm is facing to the rear as they transfer across the circle. You want to see a really nice foot position so they're not too tight, not too wide. You don't want to see the heel on the floor. And ideally, what you want to see here as well is if you look at the right femur or the left femur, depending if they're right or left foot, if the femur is more parallel to the ground, they're going to have a more parallel transition across the circle. If it's up and facing towards the sky, they're going to push off their toe and loop up and down. And that's the thing you want to try and avoid. So let's look at that one more time. Oh, different one. So that was Lily's problem there. Always has been with the glide is the fact she always pushes off her toe, and that kind of makes a suboptimal delivery. Now what we're going to do is kind of take a step forward. I'm having to rush a little bit because we're going to run out of time. Is talk about kind of gliding across the circle and then reactivity when they get to the other end. So it's a glide, and then you're going to pop up in the air and land again. You'll teach agility, balance, coordination, strong contact, athletic stiffness, all these things at the same time as developing their technical capability. So you're going to glide, land, and pop. If they're good at this, you'll know that they have good reference points for their feet. Let's look at this again. Excellent. And then the last one we'll focus on from the glide pop is the glide to gong. Let's have a look, see this one. So as you can see, the landing movement here, and this is kind of something that's like less optimal. So a hip's not in a great position, but what we're doing here is educating her that as soon as she lands, that foot's got to be active. If that foot is anchored on a heel, this hip will never engage in the right time. So getting her used to gliding across the circle, landing, and then moving that foot is incredibly important. You can see, looking to the rear, shot put would be here, so it's well behind the left hip. This isn't actually opened up. So what you're trying to do here is get them used to the first trigger movement of the delivery after you've transferred out the back of the circle.